But he wrote an article here, Fever Face, WNBA playoff, and Caitlin Clark return questions after loss to Valkyries. So if you guys don't know, Caitlin Clark, obviously, she's been injured and she looks like she's at practice. She's wearing shoes, whereas Chloe Bibby was in slides. Caitlin Clark was in her shoes. No one knows what's going on.
The Indiana Fever are hanging on for dear life in the playoff race, sitting in the 8th place with only 4 games left. But now, the spotlight isn't just on wins and losses, it's on their roster. Why? Because Caitlin Clark's possible return could force the Fever to cut one of their own players.
I wasn't expecting Caitlin Clark to be coming back this early, but ESPN put out an article earlier this week, kind of summing up, they was predicting Caitlin Clark to be back by August the 12th. Now, this just came out of the pipeline of the Indiana Fever front office. Let's pull it up right now.
That's right. To survive the injury storm, Indiana brought in Odyssey Sims, Shea Petty, and Aerial Powers on short-term deals. But with Clark close to a comeback, the Fever's hardship exemption could vanish, leaving the team with a brutal decision. Who stays and who gets sent home just before the playoffs? The only reason Indiana is even in this roster mess is because of how brutally injuries have hit them this year. Sydney Colson, Ari McDonald, and Sophie Cunningham are all finished for the season. Chloe Bibby is sidelined. Caitlin Clark herself has been out since July with a groin injury. That left the Fever so depleted that they had to apply for hardship exemptions just to fill out a competitive lineup. The league granted them permission, and Indiana signed Odyssey Sims to stabilize the backcourt, then added Shea Petty and Aerial Powers on short contracts. Those moves kept the team alive in the playoff hunt, but everyone knew it was temporary. The second Clark was healthy enough to return, the Fever would have to shrink their roster back to regulation size. That's the brutal reality of the situation. Indiana's injury crisis didn't just test their depth, it forced them into a corner where every decision now has consequences. Right now, Indiana is clinging to the 8th and final playoff spot with just 4 games left. That means every game is essentially a do-or-die matchup, and the roster decisions they make in the coming days could be the difference between extending their season or watching the playoffs from home. They face Phoenix, Chicago, Washington, and Minnesota, all teams that either sit near them in the standings or sit at the very top. There's no room for mistakes. Bringing Clark back sounds like a dream, but it also means removing one of the players who's been helping the team survive her absence. That's the gamble. Do you cut someone who's been producing and risk losing their chemistry? Or do you roll the dice on Clark being sharp enough after 2 months off to immediately carry the team? The clock is ticking, and the Fever don't have time to experiment. When we talk about roster moves, it's easy to get caught up in numbers, exemptions, and contract terms. But behind every transaction is a player, a person, whose career and livelihood hang in the balance. That's what makes the Indiana Fever situation so tricky. If Caitlin Clark is cleared to return, the hardship exemption that allowed Indiana to sign Shea Petty and Aerial Powers will vanish, and one of them will almost certainly be let go. Imagine being Shea Petty, a seasoned veteran, known for her defense, grit, and ability to provide leadership in tough moments. She didn't come to Indiana expecting to be a star, but she did come in ready to contribute. And when she got the call, she did exactly that, stepping into a depleted roster and giving the Fever exactly what they needed: stability. Yet now, despite doing her job and doing it well, she could be the odd woman out simply because the team's superstar is back. Or picture Aerial Powers. She's a scorer, a spark plug, someone who can come off the bench and change the rhythm of a game. In a stretch where Indiana desperately needed buckets, she provided them. She kept the Fever competitive when options were limited, and yet her reward could be a one-way ticket out of the lineup. Not because she failed, but because circumstances shifted. This is the harsh side of pro sports. These aren't just chess pieces on a board. These are athletes who work their entire lives for opportunities, and when they finally get one, it can be ripped away in an instant. And it's not just about playing time. For players on short-term contracts, it's about paychecks. It's about whether another team notices their effort and offers them a spot next season. It's about whether they get another chance in the WNBA at all. For fans, it's heartbreaking. The Fever faithful have embraced these fill-ins, watching them scrap and claw to keep Indiana alive in the playoff hunt. Now, those same fans may have to see one of their new favorites cut loose. Not because of performance, but because of rules. Clark's return is a blessing, but it forces Indiana to make a decision that feels almost cruel. Someone who gave everything during her absence will be told, "Thank you, but we don't need you anymore." And that, more than anything, shows the human cost of what's about to happen. On paper, Caitlin Clark's return is the ultimate win for the Fever. She's the engine of their offense, the floor general who makes everyone else better, and the reason they even have playoff hopes at all. But here's the thing. Her return doesn't just bring hope. It brings risk in a lot of it. Clark hasn't played since July 15th. That's nearly 2 months on the sidelines, rehabbing a tricky groin injury. Coming back from that kind of layoff, especially when the first games back will be must-win, high-intensity battles, is no small task. There's no easing into things here. The moment she checks in, she's expected to be Caitlin Clark, the scorer, the passer, the leader, the difference maker. But what if she's rusty? What if her rhythm is off? What if she's not fully healed? That's where the danger comes in. If Indiana cuts someone like Shea Petty or Aerial Powers to make room for Clark, they're betting that she's ready to play at or near her peak. But if she isn't, they've lost depth for nothing. They'll have sacrificed a contributor for a star who might need more time to get back into form. And in a playoff race this tight, there's no time to wait. Then there's the health question. Groin injuries are notoriously unpredictable. Even if Clark looks good in practice, one wrong move in a live game could set her back. Is it worth risking her long-term health for a short-term playoff push? That's the balance Indiana has to strike. The Fever's future is built around Clark. She's their franchise cornerstone. But she's also 23 years old, with potentially a decade of dominance ahead. Do you risk that for a handful of playoff games in 2025? Fans are torn. On one hand, they want to see Clark back on the floor, lighting it up, reminding everyone why she's the most exciting player in the WNBA. On the other hand, they know rushing her could backfire badly, and that's what makes this moment so delicate. Clark's return isn't just about adding a superstar back to the lineup. It's about balancing hope with risk, short-term excitement with long-term caution, and playoff dreams with future stability. When all is said and done, this roster decision could define the Fever's season, and maybe even their next few years. If Indiana makes the right call, keeps the right player, and integrates Clark seamlessly back into the lineup, they could not only secure a playoff berth but also make noise once they're in. Imagine Clark running the floor with Aaliyah Boston dominating the paint, Kelsey Mitchell hitting shots, and Odyssey Sims adding veteran leadership. That's a core that could scare anyone. But if they make the wrong move, if they cut the wrong player, disrupt team chemistry, or rush Clark back too soon, the fallout could be brutal. They could miss the playoffs entirely, wasting a season where they fought through adversity just to stay alive. Or worse, Clark could re-injure herself, setting back her career and the team's rebuild. This isn't just about who plays in the next 4 games. It's about what message the organization sends. Do they prioritize loyalty to the players who carried them in Clark's absence? Do they roll the dice on star power even if it means breaking hearts in the locker room? Or do they find a middle ground that protects their long-term future? Whatever they choose, the impact will last. Fans will remember if Indiana makes the playoffs. They'll remember if Clark comes back and dominates. But they'll also remember if the team falters after cutting a player who had been instrumental down the stretch. This isn't just a roster shuffle, it's a turning point. For Caitlin Clark, this is also about legacy. She hasn't even finished her second year in the league, but already her presence is forcing franchise-altering decisions. That's the level of influence she carries. And whether Indiana thrives or stumbles, her return will be remembered as the moment everything changed, and for better or worse.